This is TWiT.
All right, I'm going to do an experiment on this next bit, the whiskey bit.
Yeah.
I am going to shut up and record with this plot note. Record your entire piece and see
All right.
what the notes are that it comes up with.
Well, I'm in London, so of course I went to World of Whisky because this is one of the few places in the world that you can buy the Flora and Fauna edition whiskeys. And so this week I grabbed Blair Athol. And I had just unwrapped it, so I haven't even tasted it yet. So Blair Athol is actually a town, and the distillery is outside of Blair Athol in a little area called Pitlochry. This is all north of Edinburgh, so this is in the Highlands. In fact, it's at the very southern edge of the Grampian Mountains, in a bit of a flatland moor area there, with a good water source called Alt de Burn, which means the burn of the otter, or the river of the otter. This is one of the old distilleries. It was originally founded by John Stewart and Robertson in 1798, although at the time they called it Adur, which was the name of the waterway at the time. And didn't do well at all, shut down shortly thereafter. But in 1825, it was enlarged and reopened and called Blair Athol, likely because that was the name of the duke that owned all the land in the area and the town. And so they did a little better in the early 1800s. It was acquired by Peter Mackenzie, who was one of the large whiskey barons at the time in 1886. And then, of course, it got into trouble during Prohibition, all those sorts of things. So Blair and Sons acquired them. That's Arthur Bell and Sons bought Blair Athol. At the same time, they acquired Dufftown and a few others, all in financial distress. Arthur Bell and Sons makes a whiskey, which they still do to this day, called Bell's Blend. So they were making blended whiskey in the 1850s, just like all the other big blenders that we've been talking about recently. And so the Bell's Blend, which is still made today, is made with a variety of these whiskeys, include Blair Athol as the primary whiskey goes in that blend to this day, along with Dufftown and Inchgower and Glenkinchie and Cowriel and a few others. So shortly after those were all rolled up in 1933. With the war coming on, everything got shut down, and then after the war, they sort of recovered. And then we never really have talked about Arthur Bell and Sons before. It's because they were acquired by Guinness in 85, and then of course Guinness merges in with the Distillers Company, become United Distillers in 1987. And it was Distillers Company that came up with that idea in 88 called the Masters of Malt, which was Glenkinchie, Dalwhinnie, Cragganmore, Talisker, Lagavulin, all whiskeys we've talked about before, and really was one of those moments that put whiskey on the map again, because people had moved away from it to highballs and things in the 70s. But Lagavulin being the big hit, it suddenly peat whiskey became cool. And so that happened in 88. And then in 91 was when United Distillers went past this Masters of Malt and created this Flora and Fauna series. So these were all whiskeys that didn't have brands. We talked about this last year when I got the Dahlia 16. And there was actually 26 of them. So these were all distilleries that tended to go into blends. Some go into Johnny Walker, some go into Bell's, and a couple of others. And that includes things like Blair Athol and a bunch of the others I mentioned, Dahlia, Mordlock, Rosebank, and so forth. But United Distillers, in trying to just make more of their whiskey approachable, would do specialty bottlings of this, largely only for the local market. This bottle does not have an export license on it. And it's one of the reasons I only tend to get them in the UK, because they're just very hard to come by. And so Flora and Fauna, that was 91. That's a while ago. They've sort of come and gone. It's big with collectors. When they initially came out, they were like 20 pounds. When I first ran into them in early aughts, some of them were 40, 50 pounds. Today, the very popular ones, like the Mortlock 16, if you can find one, 200, 300 pounds. Really hard to come by. Now, the United Distillers just didn't exist anymore, because by 1997, they are acquired by Grand Metropolitan, and that all pulls together to become what we know as Diageo. So this is now all Diageo, for better or worse. And again, I have the longer I get to know Diageo, the less I dislike them. The distillery itself is a classic, partially automated distillery in the Highlands. So no peat. I did note that they use cream yeast, because that seems to amuse you too. They do a short fermentation, about 2 days, for 50 hours or so. Their wort is cloudy. They use a mixed washback approach. So they have 4 wooden washbacks and 2 steel washbacks, which is unusual in their fermentation and preparation of the wort before they go into a pair of 13,000 liter wash stills and a pair of spirit stills. These stills are known to be pear-shaped. You can see the pictures that you had of them there. Just to say they have no reflux bowls. Their lie arms are fairly straight. It makes for a very mild whiskey. Now, normally this whiskey is only used for blending, and so it typically is only aged in bourbon casks because they're the least expensive. But this Flora and Fauna bottling of Blair Athol, which is a 12-year-old, is entirely barreled in first fill sherry casks. So this has spent 12 years in a sherry cask, and you can see it. Look at the color on that for a 12-year-old. It's unbelievable. So I am a very happy man. I haven't even tasted it yet because it's rare. Most of the time if you have sherry cask finishes, the last year or the blending point is the only time it's in sherry. So this smells of sherry like strongly. It's only 40%. So there's not a lot of alcohol smell. Nice glasses at the curio.
Yeah, no kidding.
Mm-hmm. Oh lordy, yes sir. Now, it's got a sharpness to it. Like, there's no peat in this, but there's definitely a smokiness. Like, that's interesting to me, and it warms really well. Like, well, hello, you just had a nice drink of whiskey. But, yeah, a very potent cherry flavor. And these, they just don't have a brand. Like, look at this bottle. It's a very standardized bottle. This is literally what we call the Flora and Fauna bottle. It looks like, there's so many bottles that look like this, and all the labels are yellow. You have to read them. They're not distinctive on the shelf to understand what they are. Now, I picked this up today for £65, so about $80 US at World of Whiskey. Not particularly expensive. It is very hard to find in the US. It's not impossible, but it is difficult, which you'll probably pay twice that, $150. And that's a bit much for a 12-year-old. But if you're in the UK, go get one. Bring it home. Your friends will never had it because they're very hard to find outside of the UK, and they're fun. They're a nice, very drinkable whiskey from a brand you've never heard of because it's never marketed except in these rare occasions in the Flora and Fauna bottlings.
Very nice.
Yeah.
Man, one of these days I'm gonna have to take up drinking.
I wouldn't recommend it. Impairs your judgment.
But it looks like you're having so much fun.
Yeah, I am. Well, and it's a whole thing about telling a story. Can you tell that photograph was taken with the bottle laying on its side? Because there's a big bubble there.
Oh, look at that.
Yeah.
Oh, boy.
That's a giveaway. Wow.
Yeah, it is.
This one, no.
That's it. It's that.
Yeah.
So. Anyway, the fun part is I picked this up earlier today, and I've been working at the conference doing all these things. And all my friends have been staring at the bottle. It's like, what do we do? It's like, I'm not opening it till Windows Weekly. Get at it tomorrow.
I would have opened it, but they turned off my internet. Sorry.
Yeah. Well, and I'm not coming home with this, right? This is going to be shared amongst my friends this week before I head off to Stockholm for next week.
Very nice. Very, very nice.
So I mean, every time we've done this in London, I have gone to World of Whiskey and picked up a Flora and Fauna. It's just like, add this to your list of things to do when you're in London or anywhere in the UK. Find a good whiskey shop, go get a Flora and Fauna bottling. Take their recommendation. I don't think any of them are bad, but some of them are really special. And a 12-year sherry-aged whiskey is pretty rare.
Nice. Yeah, I like the idea that it was in the barrel for 12 years. That's great.
Yeah. And that also means that they very much intentionally made this.
Right.
They took new make and barreled it differently than what
they knew it. They were
do.
They were up to something.
They intended to make a Flora and Fauna from it.
Yeah. Very interesting. I like the name too. Blair Athol.
Blair Athol. Yeah, it's
comes from the Gaelic, according to Matt, from Blair Athfoda, which translates to the English, the plain of the New Ireland. Well, we've all learned something today, I think.
There you go. Yeah.